I knew something bad was coming the second I heard those sharp heels hitting my dock. The sound cut through the soft morning air like warning bells. I turned around with my coffee still warm in my hand, and there she was. Brenda Thornfield, HOA president. Clipboard clutched like a weapon. Face tight like she smelled something rotten. She marched straight toward me at 7 in the morning like she owned the lake, the shoreline, and maybe even the sky. "This dock is a violation," she snapped. Her voice was sharp enough to slice through the cool mist hanging over the water. She shoved a stack of papers in my face. "You have 48 hours to remove it, or we start the process of taking your property." The coffee that tasted soft and warm a minute ago suddenly felt bitter. The cool smell of pine drifting from the woods behind me suddenly felt cold. My dock also felt different under my feet. Not because of her threat, but because this dock wasn't just wood and bolts. It was the last promise I made to my wife, Sarah, before cancer took her. We designed it together in her final months. We picked the cedar. We argued over the railing height. We sketched the shape on scrap paper during chemo days. I built it because she made me promise I would. So hearing someone call it an eyesore hit me like a punch. "Ma'am," I said quietly, my voice shaking more than I wanted, "you might want to check those property lines again." She rolled her eyes, the kind of roll that says she doesn't check anything except her reflection. "Community rules overrule whatever little paperwork you think you have, Mr. Morrison. 48 hours. Then she spun on her heel, her perfume leaving a plastic sweet smell on my cedar boards. Her husband's oversized truck rumbled nearby, its engine coughing black smoke. It felt like the whole world had turned ugly in minutes. Most people would panic. Most people would tear down the dock to avoid fines. But I'm not most people. I'm a retired engineer. And engineers don't panic. We investigate. After she left, I stood alone on the dock. The morning mist floated across the water like thin smoke. A loon cried from the far side of the lake, that lonely wild sound that always made Sarah smile. I put my hand on the railing we built together. Smooth cedar, warm under the rising sun. I whispered, "I'm not letting anyone erase you." I had to know why this woman thought she had the right to take something so personal. So I drove to the county records office the next morning, still wearing the same boots and jacket from the night before. My coffee steamed on my truck console as I walked inside. The building smelled like dusty paper and old printer ink. Behind the counter sat Dolores Martinez, short, gray hair, round glasses, eyes that missed nothing. She had worked there since before I was born, and she carried the quiet confidence of someone who had seen every kind of property drama known to mankind. "What brings you in this early?" she asked, sliding her glasses up. "HOA trouble," I said. She sighed like she had been waiting for those words. "They've been acting bolder lately. What did they say?" I explained the dock fight, explained the threat, explained how Brenda acted like she ruled the entire lake. Dolores raised an eyebrow. "Did you look at your deed carefully?" She disappeared into the back room, papers rustling, drawers opening, old boxes sliding. After a few minutes, she returned carrying a file so old it smelled like a closed-up attic. "Your property has an unusual record," she said, tapping the folder. "Very unusual." I leaned in. The edges were crisp with age. The ink faded, the language formal and old, almost antique. She pointed to a section written in careful handwriting. "Riparian rights," she said softly. "Full water use rights up to the high water mark." My heart kicked. "Wait, does that mean?" "It means," Dolores said, smiling like she was watching a fireworks show, "your property isn't just lakefront. You legally control the water touching it." I stared at the old document. My great-uncle's name was on it, Theodore Morrison. I barely remembered him. Some distant relative who left me the house. But here he was, writing history in ink I never knew existed. Dolores wasn't done. "There's more," she said, flipping another page. "Your great-uncle built the original dam. The county granted him long-term water management rights almost a century ago. The words hit me slow, one by one, like stepping stones across a wide river. "You mean?" I whispered. She nodded. "You don't just own the dock, you own the lake system." My throat tightened. The air felt heavier. The buzzing lights, the hum of the old printer, the distant squeak of a rolling cart, everything faded around me. Brenda had marched onto my dock waving her clipboard like she controlled the whole world. And she had no idea I legally held authority over the very water she stood on. I walked out of that office in a daze. The sunlight felt different. The gravel crunched under my boots like crackling fire. The lake glimmered in the distance. Mine. Legally mine. Brenda had declared war on the wrong man. And she didn't even know the battlefield belonged to me. My hands were still shaking when I pulled into my driveway. The lake shimmered behind my house, calm and quiet like it had been waiting for me to learn the truth. I walked down to the dock, ran my fingers over the cedar rails Sarah and I picked out together, and felt something rising in my chest. Not anger, not fear, something firmer, something steady. Brenda had no idea what she'd stepped into. By the time Saturday rolled around, the whole neighborhood had a flyer taped to their doors. HOA emergency meeting, 10 a.m. community center. The paper smelled like cheap ink and desperation. I knew Brenda had planned this as her stage to humiliate me. She didn't know she was walking straight into her own trap. Jake, my neighbor from 2 houses down, stopped by that morning. He's the kind of guy who always smells faintly like fresh sawdust and strong coffee. He pointed to the flyer stuck on my mailbox. "She's coming for blood," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "You okay?" "Better than okay," I replied, sipping my coffee. I came prepared. He studied my face, saw something different, and nodded. "Good, because half the neighborhood's sick of her." The community center smelled like floor cleaner and burnt coffee, the kind that's been sitting in a metal pot for 10 hours. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead, humming like angry insects. Around 30 neighbors sat on folding chairs, whispering to each other. Some had that nervous, leaning forward posture, like they were watching a courtroom drama. Then Brenda strutted in. Her heels clacked on the polished floor, fast and sharp, each step announcing she was ready for war. She wore a blazer that probably cost more than my truck, and her oversized ring caught every bit of overhead light like a disco ball. Her husband Rick stood behind her with his giant arms crossed, chest puffed like a peacock that had swallowed someone else's toolbox. "Let's begin," Brenda said, her voice loud and crisp. "We have a serious violation threatening our property values." She gestured to the projector screen. A giant photo of my dock appeared, taken at the worst possible angle. The lighting made it look almost crooked, like she'd tried to make it the villain of a crime documentary. "This," she snapped, stabbing the picture with a laser pointer, "is an unauthorized structure. It must be removed immediately." A few uneasy murmurs spread through the room. I didn't stand yet. I sat still, letting her dig her own hole. She clicked to the next slide. More photos. More dramatic angles. She spoke like she was narrating a murder case. "This homeowner has ignored our standards, ignored our authority, ignored the community's needs." She paced the front of the room, her perfume leaving a strong chemical sweetness in the air. Rick stood behind her with a self-satisfied smirk, his hand resting casually on the chair beside him like he was marking territory. Brenda took a deep breath, puffing herself up. "I propose immediate fines of $500 per day until this structure is removed, and if he refuses, we pursue a lien on his property." That was it. Time for the truth. I stood slowly. Chairs creaked as heads turned. Brenda froze mid-step, eyes narrowing. "Mr. Morrison," she said sharply, "this is not your time to speak." I walked toward the front anyway, calm, steady, my boots thudding on the shiny floor. The air felt warm against my face, and I could hear my own heartbeat. I reached the podium and set down a folder of documents Dolores had helped me copy. "Actually," I said, my voice level but loud enough to carry, This is exactly the time." The room fell completely silent. I opened the folder and pulled out one of the old maps. The paper felt thin and soft, like something that had lived a long time. I held it up. "This is the original county water management agreement from 1923, I said, looking directly at Brenda. "My great-uncle built the dam that created this lake. The county granted him, and his heirs, full water management control." Brenda laughed, loud, fake, sharp. "Are you serious?" I nodded. "Very." I handed the document to Margaret Morgan, the retired attorney who lived on Lakeside Drive. She adjusted her reading glasses, her brow knitting as she scanned the page. When she looked up, her face had gone completely still. "This is legitimate," she said quietly. A wave of whispers rippled through the room. Brenda's smile cracked. Her fingers tightened around her laser pointer until her knuckles went white. I continued. "I also have riparian rights written into my deed. That means I legally control the water touching my property, not the HOA." Rick stepped forward, face flushing red. "This is nonsense," he barked. "You can't just—" But I wasn't done. "And," I added, pulling out the last set of papers, "the county has been paying annual water management fees into a trust under my family's name for 70 years. That got everyone's attention. Jake let out a low whistle. Brenda's jaw dropped, then snapped shut like she'd just bitten into something sour. Her breathing got fast. Her posture stiffened like she'd suddenly swallowed a broom. "This doesn't mean anything," she snapped, voice rising. "We have the authority to maintain community standards." "No," I said gently, "you don't. Not here. Not on water you don't own. Not on water my family built and maintained before your HOA ever existed." Silence. No hum from the lights, no shifting chairs, nothing, just stillness. Then Margaret stood. "He's right," she said firmly. "The HOA has no jurisdiction over dock structures on water he legally controls." The room buzzed. Some neighbors nodded. Others looked stunned. A few looked relieved. Brenda's face turned red, then purple. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Finally she hissed, "We will challenge this." I nodded. "You can try." She grabbed her clipboard so hard it creaked. "This isn't over." But everyone in the room knew the truth. It was over for her. She just hadn't realized it yet. Because that night, as I sat on my dock and watched the moonlight ripple across the water, I heard the quiet hum of an engine. Brenda and Rick were not done. Their boat drifted close, too close. Their voices carried across the lake. "We'll get rid of it," Rick muttered. "Accidents happen." I froze. The wind carried the scent of lake water and gasoline. They were planning something stupid, something dangerous. They were about to make the biggest mistake of their lives. I knew something was wrong the moment I stepped onto my porch the next morning. The air smelled different. Not like the usual cool lake breeze. Not like wet cedar. It smelled sharp, oily, like gasoline on water. My stomach dropped. Then I heard it. Crack. Not a clean snap. More like a heavy crunch of wood giving way under force. I ran down the hill toward the lake, my heartbeat thudding in my ears. And there it was. A corner of my dock, Sarah's corner, was shattered. Splintered boards floated on the water like broken ribs. The place where she wanted her memorial bench was torn apart, as if someone had taken a bite out of the lake. And 50 yards out, pretending to fiddle with the engine like a bad actor? Rick. His boat bobbed gently, engine sputtering in fake distress. His face held the world's worst expression of innocence. "Throttle got stuck," he shouted. "Mechanical malfunction. Real shame." Shame wasn't the word for what rose in my chest. My fists tightened, my jaw locked. The smell of fuel mixed with the cold lake air, making my eyes sting. Behind me, my neighbor Jake came running in a bathrobe and sandals, breath steaming in the morning chill. "Garrett," he said, staring at the wreckage, "you know he did that on purpose." I nodded. "Engineers don't accuse without proof, we gather evidence." By noon, I'd installed cameras. By evening, I'd made 2 important phone calls. One to an old marine mechanic friend. The second to Detective Collins from County Water Patrol, a woman who took Sabotage personally. The next day, Tom the mechanic crouched beside Rick's boat in my driveway. He breathed in the chilly air, wiped grease on his palm, and said, well, look at that. He pointed to fresh tool marks inside the throttle housing. This wasn't a malfunction, Tom said. Someone rigged this to jam forward. Detective Collins' face hardened. That's destruction of critical water infrastructure, she said. And with your water management authority? That's a felony. By the afternoon, deputies were knocking on Rick's door. His yells echoed across the lake as they cuffed him, the metallic click slicing through the quiet morning like justice on a mission. Brenda stood frozen on her porch, hands trembling as her husband was stuffed into the back of the squad car. Her carefully styled hair shook in the cold wind. Her face turned pale, then blotchy red. Her perfect world was cracking, piece by piece. But she wasn't done. People like Brenda never go quietly. 2 days later, I got a certified letter from a fancy downtown law firm. The envelope smelled like expensive paper and arrogance. The letter accused me of faking documents, defrauding the HOA, and somehow suffering from quote. They wanted me to pay $47,000 in fines. The moment Patricia, my water rights attorney, read the letter, she nearly spit out her tea laughing. Oh, they're panicking, she said. And they just put their panic in writing. Beautiful. But Brenda wasn't finished. She launched a full smear campaign online, Facebook posts, HOA emails, a dramatic YouTube video filmed in her kitchen under bright ring lights, where she claimed I was mentally unstable and manipulating history to steal community assets. Jake texted me screenshots. Neighbors sent me links. Some people even tagged me. But the best part? No one believed her anymore. Because while she was screaming lies into a camera, I had something she didn't. Every agency in the state backing me. It all came to a head at the town council emergency meeting. The community center was packed tighter than a church on Easter Sunday. The air smelled like overbrewed coffee and warm jackets. Folding chairs squeaked as people leaned forward, hungry to see the showdown. Brenda walked in like she was starring in her own TV drama, flanked by one terrified-looking attorney. She glared at me like she wanted to set me on fire with her eyes. She took the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, "we are under attack by a man forging documents to steal our lake." She clicked through charts, graphs, dramatic music in the background. It was a whole performance. Then, County Attorney Michelle Rodriguez stepped up. Calm, sharp, professional. "Our office has verified every document Mr. Morrison provided," she said. "His water rights are authentic and fully enforceable. The HOA has been operating without jurisdiction for 15 years. The crowd gasped. Brenda's mouth fell open. But the final punch came from environmental engineer Dr. Morgan. "Mr. Morrison's great-uncle designed this watershed system," she said, pointing to diagrams. "His engineering has prevented millions in flood damage. His management is essential to regional safety." Then she turned to Brenda. "Your interference could have caused catastrophic damage." Silence, cold, heavy, final. When it was my turn, I walked to the podium. The room felt warm, bright, safe. "I never wanted a fight," I said. "I just wanted to protect the dock my wife and I built together." People nodded. Some even wiped their eyes. But if someone thinks bullying is leadership, well, they should rethink what leadership means. The room erupted in applause. Long, loud, thunderous. Brenda sat frozen, her perfect posture slumped. Her attorney packed up his papers quietly. She didn't look at anyone. By the next morning, a moving truck sat in her driveway. She was gone within a week. 6 months later, the lake became something beautiful. Under new leadership, the HOA transformed. We worked together. We built the Millbrook Watershed Conservation Trust, restoring the whole lake system. We created the Sarah Morrison Environmental Learning Center, where kids now learn about ecosystems right on the new dock. My dock. Her dock. Our dock. Every morning, I sit with my coffee and watch the sunrise over the calm water. The cedar railing warms under my hand. Birds drift across the sky. The lake ripples softly. Peace. Freedom. No clipboards, no threats, no Brenda, just water, sunlight, and memory. And every time I breathe in that cool lake air, I whisper, "Sarah, we did it."